We've had a number of press announcements about events in space. Boeing recently had an anomalous event with one of their satellites. The British had a satellite from the late 70s that suddenly showed up in a completely different part of space with no explanation as to how it got there. We go, okay, even if we even see those headlines, if you haven't clicked on space stories, your newsfeed, the algorithms won't even give you those stories. But if you're in that realm, you understand this is related to the fact that only the US and China have satellites with arms that can go up to another satellite, pick it up, and literally hurl it into another part of space. And of course, this matters because we're so dependent here on Earth on satellite networks. And we've seen the Chinese do that. They have picked up one of their own satellites and hurled it. They didn't pick one of ours because then that would have been an act of war, but they did it with their own and it sent a very powerful signal. So there's a reason the Pentagon has said space is the most important warfighting domain now. People haven't quite understood why is that. It's because all the communications, guidance systems, everything is space-based. So those are some of the layers of this story. And then you can take it into not just going out into space, but going down into the subatomic structure of reality, where nanotechnology, the creation of biological warfare at the level of viruses, these are all very real things, right? There was a very interesting article, I think it came out in quite a long time ago, in 2012, called Hacking the President's DNA. And it was all about that our DNA sequencing systems now allow you to create a disease that will affect only one person. So if you get the president's DNA, you can do that. What does the Secret Service do now? They spend a lot of time cleaning up the president's DNA, not just guarding the president, but guarding their genetics, if you see what I mean. So we are not thinking about conflict on all these different levels, but that is where it's happening. So that's why I say the technological frontier is the new battle zone. We just are used to thinking of conflicts because of photo ops. So we see tanks, boots on the ground, we're like, oh, that's a war zone. We don't see events in space or in, biological labs. So therefore we don't think of it that way. But that doesn't mean it isn't.
Yeah, okay. I have to restate two things that I just heard, because I don't know if anyone else in the room had not heard those before. The first being satellites that are armed with arms to approach other satellites, grab them, and throw them out of orbit.
Exactly.
I'd heard about this from your writing, but remarkable and so science fiction-esque, it's hard to wrap your mind around. The part that I had not heard legitimately, though, is the personalized DNA warfare. That's absolutely terrifying.
Terrifying.
I mean, I'm totally even struggling for a question to ask off of that, but the one I want to ask is, how aggressively are we pursuing countermeasures? What do those look like? And both of these concepts that you discussed, the space warfare and genetic warfare, those are covert wars. Mm. So the extent to which they could be incredibly active today and entirely off our radar is tremendous.
Well, I think this is why I use the term the invisible war. And as I said this morning, I've been writing a lot in recent years about the hot war in cold places, the cold war in hot places, because people are so focused on Ukraine because you can send in a photographer. Also, to be fair, there's this old rule in journalism, which is if it bleeds, it leads, meaning if there's a deceased human, then there's a human interest story. A satellite without a deceased human, there's no human interest story there. I spoke to a couple of the editors of the major newspapers, and for example, I said, I mentioned the incident this morning where somebody cut the cable that connected our satellites to the subsea cable network. And I said, why are you not reporting this? This is a major event. It marked the beginning of subsea cable warfare. And all of us have a phone on us. We're all dependent on that subsea cable network. And the reply I got was, people think Wi-Fi is in the air. So if you have to explain that it comes from a satellite connecting to a subsea cable, that's 2 paragraphs. You've already lost the audience. They'll never read it. Right. People are not interested in the technicalities. And I'm like, maybe they're not wrong about that. You know, we live in a world where it's maybe just too hard to understand the technology.